Gacha games are hit and miss. Mostly miss, but every so often, one lands just right. Arknights, Punishing Grey Raven. Okay, you know what? Punishing Grey Raven, it didn't hit right initially, but after rectifying their issues, yeah, it totally hit right. And more recently, Path to Nowhere. But no gacha game has had as large of an impact on me, and beyond me, the larger gacha genre overall, than Genshin Impact. And I know what you're thinking. I do. But Stix, Genshin is crap. And sure, I'm not here to contest your opinion or tell you that your opinion is any less valid than mine, because honestly, it isn't. And yeah, Genshin Impact definitely does some things wrong. The endgame, well, I mean, the lack of real endgame and a future without one makes me feel less compelled to log in and progress outside of major patches. They're not very generous with, well, anything. Rates, event rewards. Yet, for all of its faults, the game does so many things right that I personally went from someone who detested gacha games just a few years ago to someone who's pursuing a career in covering them. Not because I hate them, but because I found enjoyment in them. Well, at least in some of them. And this is thanks mostly to Genshin Impact. Before we jump into this video though, I do want to thank all of our incredible patrons over on Patreon. You guys do not need to support Mrs. Stix and I, but you still choose to, and trust me, it is appreciated beyond anything I can convey verbally. You guys are incredible, and admittedly, if you have a moment, follow Mrs. Stix and I over on Twitter. We'd really appreciate that. Now, I'm not here today to shit talk the game, to say that X feature or Y system is bad. I am here to discuss what about Genshin Impact made me change my mind on the genre. Now, I'll admit it has been a few months since I last logged into the game, not because I haven't been enjoying it, but because I've had other games that I needed to cover. So for this video in particular, I'll probably be using mostly old footage that I acquired earlier this year combined with trailer footage. Speaking of earlier this year though, that is when I officially started playing this game. Both my wife, Mrs. Stix, and I got to participate in the very first beta tests for the game and played them quite extensively. The beta had a number of issues, but the launch went over, I mean, smooth would not be the term I use to describe this. It was not without its issues, but things were dealt with in a timely manner, and the game just, well, it took off, shattering record after record, and to date continues to make history. Nahida had the highest grossing banner of all time based off of her limited run thus far, and Genshin's banners sell more than any other banners in any other gacha to date. Stepping foot into the world of Teyvat was, well, it was something that I only ever experienced in a few games. Breath of the Wild, Horizon Zero Dawn, The Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, and Xenoblade Chronicles. These were all absolutely monolith-sized games with more content that you'd ever realistically complete. They had narratives that you were interested in, but for the most part didn't ever really need to pursue them until you were ready. The main story actually became the side content, and Genshin was no different. Teyvat, or more specifically every region that comprises the world of Genshin Impact, is absolutely filled with content. With life, thriving villages, NPCs, bosses, and everything feels like it has a purpose. You might wander into this city and think to yourself, hey, that group of kids over there running around are there for decorative purposes. A few weeks later, once you've forgotten that they even existed, you'll receive a daily quest that requires you to take a short quest from them to help them count how many ships are docked in the harbor. Small little details like this help the world feel more alive than I've seen in any other gacha game thus far. This story takes you all over the world, and combined with individual character stories, you'll find yourself repeatedly visiting areas that you visited in the past. You're never forced into this linear form of progression that takes you to the next hub, rendering previous zones irrelevant. Old zones always serve a purpose, and as such, the world constantly feels like it has this unusual sense of life to it. This feeling just isn't replicated in other games, and is something you can realistically only do in RPGs. A lot of characters have significant depth to them. They have traumatic histories, have stories that are interconnected with the other characters' stories and into the main story itself. I know a lot of people have told me how incredible the story with Nahida is, because honestly, I haven't gotten to that point. Again, I haven't played it in months, therefore I haven't been able to see her story for myself. But learning of Raiden Shogun and watching the cutscenes slowly unfold while I progress through Inazuma was absolutely incredible. Yes, the world itself is absolutely stunning, but a pretty world without characters to give it purpose in life is just pointless. Seeing so many playable husbandos and waifus interacting with the world and its inhabitants made the world feel involved with what was going on. Progression, both of the story and the characters' respective relationships, was refreshing to watch slowly unfold. More than that, the characters themselves, which are the bulk of this game, were brought to life through absolutely incredible voice acting. Well, you know, most of the time anyway. Some of the voice actors were admittedly so unfitting for their characters that it just felt kinda off listening to them. But I mean, for the most part, Genshin's voice acting should be the standard for gacha games. Thankfully, games like Nikke and Pantanoa have followed suit and utilized top-tier voice acting. Shame Tower Fantasy did not. I've never really felt that Genshin's combat was anything stellar. It feels good on PC, but I don't know, I kinda hate it on my phone. Combos, unique character fighting styles and abilities, everything looks and feels good, but action combat I enjoy can be found in alternatives like Punishing Great Raven. Genshin's just feels kind of slow, and farming the artifacts to try to make things feel better is an absolute chore. And let's be honest here, you guys feel the same way. I don't think I've ever met anyone in the history of Genshin Impact's existence that genuinely feels like grinding artifacts is a rewarding experience. Don't lie, I know you guys hate it just as much as I do. If their multiplayer allowed for full individual progression within each person's respective worlds, I dare say Genshin Impact would probably be one of the greatest games that I have ever played. Unfortunately, the multiplayer is severely limited and left Mrs. Stix and I playing, well, mostly separately, but grouping together with one another either to pursue daily quests or to farm bosses and domains was a refreshing change of pace. Playing with other people feels so good. I cannot fathom why they did not put a larger focus on this feature. It is a massive missed opportunity. After playing through the story, spending weeks exploring every new region, recruiting a plethora of different characters, wasting time and resources farming artifacts for them, I grew to understand why Genshin Impact was as popular as it was. The reason? It's polished, it's quality, it's just better than any of its competition. And despite the things that Hoyo do wrong, there is just no real substitute for it right now. Love or hate the game, without it, we would not be receiving the games that we are now. Genshin changed the entire gacha landscape for the better, and in doing so, proved to me personally that gacha games that are played specifically on your phone can actually be good quality titles that have the potential to rival PC and console games. And this is something that a lot of gamers still have yet to realize. Now, if Genshin isn't your thing and you want an alternative to it, no problem, I got you covered. On screen right now, you'll find 2 open world action gacha games releasing soon. These are the only gacha games with any real chance of competing with or even surpassing Genshin Impact.